The door opened, revealing a well-designed, luxurious office, and a paper file was thrown on the person's face who just entered in the office. "What the hell is this?" His voice echoed loudly in the office. His manager went down and picked up the file from his shaky hands. The manager was sure everyone in the company heard that roar, and they must be trembling because that's who jungkook was. They called him Shark, who'd swallow you whole within seconds, and his voice was enough to shake your soul. The manager lowered his gaze. Still trembling, he spoke in a low voice. "I'm sorry, boss, but Jungkook, wasn't that clear? There's no place for sorry in my company." He roared again and walked over to where the manager was standing. His eyes burned in anger, like he'd really swallow the other man right away. "Manager, I tried, Jungkook. You tried shit," he shouted, making the man to tremble. "I gave you one job and you idiot, you couldn't do that right. Get out of my office and out my company, now." The manager lifted his gaze. He saw that coming. He knew his boss wasn't merciful, but this job was obviously important for him. "Manager, boss," his lips shaking. "Jungkook, you're fired. Out now." The manager trembled, seeing the flaming flares in his boss's eyes. Scared of his anger, he lowered his gaze. Shivering, he turned around and left the office. Everyone outside looked at the manager, fear clearly visible in their eyes. Of course, since Jungkook had a nickname like Shark in his company, everyone who worked there was scared of him. He was short-tempered and insensitive. He would turn your whole world upside down and would not even budge. His appearance was kind of deceiving because he was good looking, actually very good looking, and at some point every new female employee would have a crush on him until she'd know he was married, and also that even if he was not married, he would probably keep himself distant from the word love because he really did not know what that was. Though every female employee would still swoon over him despite all that, because of course everyone admired mixture of beauty and power. "Woman 1, poor man," she said, looking at the manager. Another one standing by her side said, "Woman 2, but it was his fault. He could not do his job, and you know how boss is. He likes everything perfect. He must be really angry right now." Woman 1, "Yes, God, just thinking of it gives me shivers," she said, doing a fake shivering. At the same moment, the office door opened and Jungkook walked out. Everyone flinched and got back to their work without moving their gaze a little. It was like they held their breath until he passed by them, and as soon as he was gone, they breathed a sigh of relief, like they just touched and come out alive. Woman 2, "Oh God, Mr. Shark is at the peak of his anger. The person who will have to deal with him right now is the most unluckiest person in the world." Vine exited the washroom with her hair packed in a towel, and she wore a bathrobe. She removed the towel from her hair. Watching herself in the mirror, she dried her hair before she put the towel away. The room's door opened and Jungkook walked in. She looked at him. He removed his coat and threw it on the bed before his hand reached his tie, which he undid with harsh movements and unbuttoned the top buttons of his shirt. By his body language, Yain could see he was in a bad mood, and most of the times he'd been in a bad mood, there were high chances would occur a terrible fight. He'd say mean things to her and she'd cry all night because she did not learn to say more mean things in return, and she did not know how to deal with her emotions. She was sensitive and he was the opposite. Although none of it could stop her from falling in love with him, because the day she married him, she really thought her life would change for good, but seeing his rude behavior, she was somewhere giving up. Though she did not give up at the end, she stayed patient, waited in a hope things would be better, and she allowed herself to love him. And every time he touched her, she fell for him, knowing very well that touch was just a need and not a love. She still valued everything he gave her because she never received anything from anyone in her life. She only got pain, and now even from her marriage where there was only pain, she was trying her best to grow a touch of happiness too. She did not know when would she finally give up, but right now she wanted to keep trying. Why, is everything okay? He looked at her as she asked that, his dark gaze holding hers sternly. He did not say anything, rather walked over to her, standing in front of her. As he looked down at her, he slowly stroked his finger through her wet hair. She swallowed. She wanted to touch him back, ask him what was wrong, why was he angry, tell him it was fine, tell him she loved him, but she knew he'd grab her wrist and push her away if she ever touched him, because apparently only he was allowed to touch her and she was not. His fingers moved from her hair to the side of her face, and now his thumb were rubbing her. She knew either he'd fight or either he'd do this to reel his anger. But why? Was that all she deserved? Couldn't he connect with her emotionally? Why it was always physical? She knew he did not care about her. All he cared about was himself. She did not know where she suddenly got the courage from, but she moved away from him and his expression definitely changed. She knew he was already angry and she shouldn't be doing this, but she was a human with feelings and a heart. She was a woman who loved him and was married to him, not a thing that was brought there just for his need. Wine, I just took a shower. He inched closer to her, grabbed her chin and lifted it up. And so, you can take a shower again, or is it a difficult chore for you? She lowered her gaze with a sad sigh. Exactly, that's who I am. I do what my husband says. Come, Vian, satisfy me. Shut up, Vian, it's none of your business. Do as I say, Vian, and don't talk too much. This is how it works, isn't it? As those words left her mouth, he grabbed her jaw harshly and brought their faces closer. I hate it when you open this mouth of yours to talk, he growled. Tears sprinkled in Yayan's eyes. God, she hated how sensitive she was, but she could not help it. That's who she was, what could she do? And love made her even more emotional, especially it was not reciprocated. Wine, I just wanted to talk to you. If you are angry at something or you had a bad day, you can share it with me, she said softly. I'm your wife, Jungkook. Why don't you write this sentence on your freaking forehead so you don't have to say it every minute? His harsh voice made her tears more thicker. Vine, do you hate it that much? You hate when I talk, you hate when I touch you, you hate that I'm your wife, you probably hate my whole existence. And with that, she did not even realize when the tears escaped her eyes. Just like every other day, she was crying again. He clenched his jaw and released her face harshly before he turned around to walk away in anger. When she grabbed his shirt by his elbow, he stopped, tears streaming from her eyes as she rested her head on his back. She did not know why she even said all that. It would change nothing. He would never change. He would always be cold. So what was the point? Maybe the pain was written in her fate and she should just accept it. She was getting hurt every day, but she never wanted to hurt him. She loved him. Fine, don't go. Although she did not even know if someone like him could ever get hurt. He grabbed her hand and moved it away, turned around, and the tears in her eyes were constant. Jungkook, cry in peace, he said before he turned around the door and stepped out of the room, closing the door behind him. Fine stood there, closing her eyes tightly. She let the tears fall. After a while, pulling herself together, she changed and got in the bed. Sitting against the bedhead, she took out her diary because that was the only way she could let the pain out, by sharing it with a piece of paper. Since that was her only friend, she began writing. Today too, the prince was angry and it was kind of same, but today I spoke more than I used to. Maybe day by day it was getting hard for me. Haven't I been waiting since too long? When will things go right for me? Never? Because maybe I don't even deserve this. Maybe I only deserve pain, because I don't remember receiving love even if I look into my past. As much as I can remember, I always adjusted. I always took everything with a smile, although it was too painful. And I was told I was like my mother, too patient, too kind for this cruel world, but I don't even remember my mother. Abusive father and selfish stepmother is all I remember. I remember living like a maid in my house. I remember getting beaten up by my own father every time my stepmother would gaslight him, and later they married me off for their own profit. But why? I never even did anything wrong. I never even hated my stepmother. I always put up a smile for her and for my father who never cared about me. Then why am I so worthless? Funny how every time I'm writing, I always lose the track and go back to my past life. But what can I do? I cannot forget all that. And the life I'm living right now, is it any better? Maybe it's me and not them. Maybe I'm unlovable. Maybe I'm worthless. Because why would everybody hate me? In that house of my father where I was treated like shit, I waited for my Cinderella moment. And that's what kept me alive. I waited for a prince who would come and save me from all that. And he did come. But the thing is that prince never looked for me. He never wanted me. He never loved me. I was just imposed on him. But did I give up? No. I was still patient. I thought maybe he would change. If he would get love, maybe he would give it back. But all my life I've only given love. I never received it back. Never. Never from my family, never from the person I'm married to. Where did I go wrong? What did I even do? At least someone should tell me what my fault is. Is being born my fault? Should I have with my mother? Because since everybody say I'm like her, maybe she could have understand me. Maybe she loved me because everyone else treats me terribly when I don't even know what wrong did I do. I tried, but the prince never changed either. Just like my father, just like my stepmother, the prince hates me too. And he would never change because I'm not worth it. I don't know what will I do. I don't know how long will I take it before I shatter into pieces and never get up. But every day I'm just trying. And I don't know when will I get really exhausted. I will stop trying. How long before I finally give up? Jungkook got back in the room and saw Wyan's sleeping figure on the bed. It was a relief for him that she was finally sleeping because at least while she was asleep, she wasn't crying. He did not know why it didn't even affect him, but every time he'd see the tears in her eyes, he'd feel this unbearable weight on his chest. He would want to run away because he could not stand it. He could not see her crying. He did not have place for emotions in his life, but the sight of her crying would make him restless and he would want to leave because he knew he would only make her cry more. He did not know how to comfort. He was a person who only knew how to hurt and break people. He went over to the bed and put the blanket over half of her body. When he saw she was hugging something that appeared like a book, he carefully took it from her hands and just out of slight curiosity, he opened it. It was not a book but a diary, and the words written on the first page. It was the first night of my marriage. The prince came, but he looked unhappy. Was he unhappy about this marriage? He did not even talk to me and left the room. I'm alone in this room unknown. He immediately closed the diary, his gaze reflective as he swallowed. It was her personal diary where she wrote from the day she got married to him. He put it on the table by the bed and stood there watching her sleeping peacefully for a moment. But he was feeling uneasy again. Should he read that diary that had got his whole attention? Maybe he could read it, because the said prince was him, wasn't it? He again picked up the diary from the table and opening it, he slowly walked over to the couch. With every word, every sentence, he felt tightness in his chest. Again, that unbearable weight, a pressure which was making him uneasy. He got to know how her life was worse than he could even imagine, how she lived like she was burdened on this world, how she never got love, and how her expectations from the prince shattered the day he entered into this house. He sat on the couch, his eyes on that diary and his breathing quickened. There was a hint of shock on his face, more hurt, but he couldn't recognize it. He was not the prince who she had been waiting and dreaming for. He was not what she deserved. He got back into the study room, his breathing still fast as he raked his hand through his hair. He picked up the box and took a stick, but before he could even light it, he threw it away and sat on the couch with his head rested on the back. He was so restless, he did not know what to do. He felt hurt for her. His heart that was ice cold ached for her. He wanted to destroy everyone who ever hurt her, and to know that he was one of those people, he felt that extreme anger. His past wasn't a jolly one either because of his parents' messed up marriage. His parents loved each other and they got married out of love, but after marriage they did nothing but make each other's lives worse than hell. Seeing them like that, he grew the thinking that marriage, love, and all was nothing but a myth. Everything was only business, and he began weighing relationships as business too. His parents, after living a hell experience with each other, finally got separated, and his mother left to start a new life without any strings attached to her past. He realized how love and marriage was nothing but a mistake, because at the end, you just leave everything behind for your peace. You leave the person you thought you loved more than yourself, and you also leave a part of yourself, your children. He hated nothing more than people who were sensitive and emotional, because he pictured them as fools, as they would easily fall, they would easily cry, they would easily trust. They were just so kind, and he hated that. Little did he know he was going to get married to someone like that. Although he never hated Vian, in the beginning when his father arranged their marriage, he did not deny, because he knew his father wouldn't stop asking, so he should just get it over with. It wasn't like a marriage was going to have any effect on him. There was a woman he did not even know, nor did he want to know, was now living in his house. He never even observed her in the starting days, but later with time she would try to talk one thing or two, and he could say how she was trying hard to make a place. He hated how kind, beautiful inside out, and how soft she was. He actually hated what she was doing, because he did not believe in marriage. Maybe one day she would leave too, just like his mother left his father. So what was all that for? He did not need love. He would survive without it. He did not want any emotional connection with her or anyone. He did not care, since he thought of marriage as business. She was living in his house, and she was given everything she needed, and in return she would give him what he needed. Not even once he thought the only thing she needed was the love, not materialistic things, but only love. Because unlike him, she did not lose her ability of feeling emotions because of her painful past. She, in fact, became more emotional, more giving, more patient, more kind. It's just that she got unlucky that the prince she was waiting for was not him. Next morning, Jungkook stirred and opened his eyes. He realized he was not in the bedroom but study room, sleeping on the couch. He got up and remembered everything from previous night. Vian's diary, her past. His chest heaved again, and with that awful feeling, he opened the door because he badly wanted to see her. As soon as he entered in the bedroom, he found it empty. He walked over to the washroom door. Vian, he said, but there was no response from the other end. His stomach churned. She wasn't in the washroom either. Maybe she was outside. Why was he so worried? He went out from downstairs to the living room, looking here and there. Jungkook, Vian. He raised his voice a little. Now he was getting anxious, because she would always be there somewhere when he would wake up. So where did she go today? What if she was finally tired? What if she finally gave up? His heart ached, a mix of anger, desperation, and pain. He raked his hand through his hair, walking away from the living room. Jungkook, Vian, he said again, and a soft voice from behind made him skip his breathing for a second. What happened? He turned around, and there she was, standing outside the kitchen area. He felt like someone just filled him with life again after almost him as he saw her face. His breathing was coming fast, and he was sweating as he bit his lower lip, walking over to her. Where were you? Vian was surprised seeing him like that. Did something happen? The maid is on leave today, so I was in the kitchen. What happened? Do you need me for something? He was catching his breath. No, I was just wondering where you were. A hint of surprise flashed on her face. Oh, she said, still unaware what has gotten into him. Why was he looking for her for nothing? Actually, I was coming to wake you up. Then I thought you must be resting, that's why I didn't. I hope you're not late for work. No, it's fine, he said quickly. Yes, I was resting. Okay. She was still kind of perplexed from the way he was looking at her and the way he was talking to her. There was a hint of softness in his voice which she could not believe was real. They sat on the dining table for breakfast, and Jungkook was still looking at Vian the same way, but she was puzzled. What was it? Not that she wouldn't like it, but it was so unlikely of him. What has gotten into him? He was not talking rudely like he usually did, and he was even having breakfast with her, which was rare. Jungkook, did you sleep well? Vian's eyes widened as she was taking a sip of juice. She almost choked on it, but thankfully she handled it. Huh? She put the glass down, staring at him. Really, what has gotten into him? I asked, did you sleep well? She nodded, muddled. Yes. He cleared his throat, shaking his head as he got up. I have to leave for work now. I will see you in the evening, he said before he took his leave. Wyan sat there all dazed and confused. He had never even once told her that in that tone, but she had just learned to her expectation. Jungkook sat in the office in his chair, his gaze dark as he clenched his jaw. Clasping his hands on the table, he stared pensive at the door, the look on his face evil. Kim Do-hyun, I will destroy everything you have. You deserve worse for hurting Wyan, he thought in his head. Kim Do-hyun was Wyan's father, and Jungkook still wasn't able to process how he dared hurt her and treated her like that all her life. He was really angry at him. I will eat up your whole business and live up to my nickname, Shark. He wore a wicked expression. You'll beg, yearn, and cry for everything you did not give her. He clenched his fist on the table. At that very moment, the door opened and Jungkook got up, seeing the guests he was expecting, those who would be his pawns to destroy Kim Do-hyun. His case was closed now. In the evening, Wyan stood beside the swimming pool on the ground floor. It was closed-roof park kind of area. Wyan was bored since she would mostly talk to maids and the workers and her day would pass, but today she was alone because they were all on leave for holidays. She thought about cleaning the pool. It wasn't much dirty, but everyday cleaning routine should be made. She picked up the net and was slowly taking out the leaves from the water. The drops of water fell out of the pool, and during her second turn, she did not realize she slipped on the spilled water and was now inside the pool with a splash. The pool wasn't for her, most definitely because it was deep enough for her and she did not know nothing about swimming at all. She could not even reach the wall. She just kept sinking down and down. She tried her best moving her legs, hands, but nothing worked. She was only sinking down and not reaching anywhere near the wall. Meanwhile, Jungkook reached back home and the first thing on his mind was to see Wyan. He just wanted to see her, to know she was there. She was fine and she would not leave. Everything that he got to know previous night was too much and it had filled him with these soft feelings of concern for her. Entering in the room, he found she was not there. He again went downstairs from the living room and he also checked kitchen, but now she wasn't there either. The feeling of uneasiness filled him again. One thing was this huge mansion and the other, every time today he'd see her, he was not there. He looked everywhere but could not find her, and he finally went to the closed roof park. As soon as he entered in the area, she saw her kicking her legs and moving her hand consistently because she somehow fell into the swimming pool and she did not know how to swim. Tense, he quickly ran to the pool, did not even bother to remove his coat, and he jumped in the water. Grabbing her from her waist, he pulled her towards him and took her in his arm, tightly bringing her head up the water. She wasn't doing any movements now, and when he got out of the water, he placed her on the ground, putting her head on his lap. Water dripping down his hair as he softly cupped her face, panic written all over his feature and his heart pounding hard. Vile. He pressed his hand on her stomach while other hand pressed her cheeks. Wyan rolled on the other side, coughing as the water spilled out her mouth. He made her sit in a side hug and she was still coughing. Jungkook, are you okay? She rested her head on his chest, breathing slowly. I'm fine, she whispered in a breathy voice. He immediately carried her in his arms to take her to the bedroom and covered her into a blanket before he placed her on the bed. He got up and removed his coat. His clothes were all wet, but that was the last thing he cared about. As he turned around, Wyan was standing now, gripping on the blanket's fabric so it would not fall, while staring at him, surprise all over her face. Of course she would be surprised seeing the sight of him. He himself was surprised, but now he knew his feelings. He quickly walked over to her. Why did you get up? Sit. Wyan, I'm fine, Jungkook. She was still slightly shocked, and he could feel it. but the part of her thought maybe anyone would have acted the same way to save her. "I'm sorry I caused you trouble. Your clothes are all wet," she said. He grabbed the side of her face and gently lifted it up. "How did you even fall?" He was still tense and so anxious. "I was cleaning the pool. You did not have to when you hadn't done it before." "I was bored," he said as he took her in a tight hug. She was taken aback, all shocked, her heart pounding. He had never hugged her, and it definitely was the hug of care, concern, of love. No, she could not get her stupid expectations all up again. But what was it? Why was he being like that? She could clearly see how panicked and concerned he was when he got her out of the pool, and now when he was looking at her. Jungkook broke the hug and read the obvious surprise on her face. "Why are you doing all this?" Her voice was low. "Doing what?" "You know, being so different." "Different as in good or bad?" "You know what I'm trying to say." "Jungkook, I got really worried about you. Are you really fine? You're not feeling cold, are you?" He knew each sentence was surprising her, but he wouldn't hide anything now. "Fine, I'm fine, but why do you even care, Jungkook?" "Jungkook, because I love you." And she had gone totally still at that, the blanket released from her grip and her hands dropping to her side. Jungkook grabbed the blanket, not letting it fall. He gave her time. After a moment of silence, he spoke himself. "But I know I've given you nothing but pain, so I don't want to be selfish. You deserve so much, and I, for sure, don't deserve you." The tears stung her eyes, and she was looking at him. His features brutally perfect, but not cold as usual. There was a hint of softness which she could not believe she was seeing right. "Vine, I don't understand. How? What even?" He loved her. Love? It sounded amazing, really amazing, but how was she supposed to believe any of it? "Jungkook, I read your diary, Vine." She blinked, frowned, and with a slight shock. "What diary?" She thought she heard it wrong. "Your diary." And she realized it was actually true. "You really did?" "Yes." She stayed quiet, didn't say another word. So now he knew she was a loser, a worthless person who'd be doing nothing but crying her whole life. Why would he even say he loved her? So this "I love you" is sympathy? He frowned. Why would she say that? "No," he replied. "Of course not. These are my feelings which I have been avoiding." It was so overwhelming and unbelievable. She did not know how to respond to any of that. "Jungkook, I'm sorry, Vine, but just because I was a..." "Why would you feel you were worthless?" "Why, because of me." His voice has risen, his features turning hard. "I was a F. And you have no idea how amazing you are. You're not worthless or unlovable. The problem was me, Vine. I had my fury about marriage and love because my parents' marriage failed, and that too very terribly. Therefore, I thought love was nothing, and so I never allowed myself to feel any of it, even though you were beginning to affect. I had started feeling pain and other feelings for you. I always avoided that and put myself back. Then why, because of me or that B, Kim Do-yeon, you would feel you were worthless?" Tears sliding from the corner of her eyes, and she was totally overwhelmed with these feelings of pain and love. She did not know anything about his parents. All she had known, they were separated, but now that she thought about it, all that must have affected him. His parents' failed marriage and the disturbing environment, and that's why he turned like this. "Jungkook, you're not the problem, and you never were. It was me. I covered myself with the rudeness and roughness because I always thought love was a myth, but knowing that how much it means to a person, I realized how wrong I was." He cupped her face and her heart melted. She let out a soft sigh, tears streaming down her eyes. His touch was so different today. He was so different today. Everything was new. It was a release of pain, but it was also painfully beautiful. "You deserve the whole world, trust me, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Don't you dare feel worthless just because people around you does not see your worth." "I had waited too long, Jungkook. With that amount of wait, I had started to feel I was the problem." "No, you're not the problem. You're right, but maybe I should have thought about others too. I should have thought about you, that maybe you were all suffering." "No, Ryan, it wasn't your fault because I never gave you a chance, and I would never have given no matter what you had done." He sighed, lowering his eyes. Jungkook, although I really want to have a chance myself, but I don't want to be selfish because I've given you nothing but pain. So if you want to slap me, push me away and go live your life happily without me, I would not stop you. She felt terrible. Too bad for herself and for him, and she lifted her shaky hand and touched his face. But then she immediately pulled away because she was not allowed to touch him. Was she now? He grabbed her hand and put it on the side of his face. Her heartbeat sped up. She felt like she connected to him for the first time. Jungkook, if you can slap me, you can touch me, you can do anything you want. Why I was a jerk who could not see how lucky I was to have you. I treated you so badly, but trust me, Ryan, I never hated you. It was just me being usual J. When I would say mean things to you, I was a D. He closed his eyes for a moment. He was so regretful for bringing so much pain in her life while she was still so patient. Have I ever told you how much I love you? And she said that. He froze for a moment, and he could feel that somehow those words were changing him, reaching inside him and rearranging him, creating a new different person, new kind of landscape, building a new person totally different. And this new person wasn't the one who did not believe in love anymore, because he was in love and he was also being loved by the person he loved. Could he ask for anything else? Jungkook, I do not deserve you. How are you like this? How did you turn into this more kind, giving and patient person after your terrible past? And how did I become so messed up because of my past? It's not your fault, Jungkook. People change differently when they have a traumatic past. Either they become emotional, some become depressed, some numb, and some people like you, cold, tough. It's not in your control. Don't blame yourself. Wyan's touch on his skin was so soft. She was so gentle. She was so amazing. He felt like she was healing him. Why did not he let her do it before? Why did not he just let her heal him? Why did not he give her the love she deserved? Jungkook, I'm sorry, he rasped. I know what I did was so wrong, but will you give me one chance, please? He badly wanted to repent and change her life. She deserves so much love, and all that he suppressed till now, he wanted to give her to that. He wanted to have this chance desperately so he could atone for his mistakes for being an A. With that, she hugged him, her palms against his chest. He let out a sigh. Ryan did not know how her life changed like this, how finally, and she would never want to not give a chance, because of course she loved him and she was a person who held into relationships forever. She would not give up. She understood his past too, and now that he was finally realizing, how could she leave him alone? Because if she'd leave, wouldn't he become angry again? Always, Jungkook, I'll always give you a chance. And he would give her the whole world, everything. He lifted his hands and took her face between them and covered her with his own. He could feel her gasp it on his, along with her flavor, sweetness like honey with a faint tart edge. It made him dizzy and at the same time soothed something deep into his soul. He, letting his hand stroke down the side of her neck to her shoulders and further down over the elegant bow of her spine to the curves. She was shaking, her hands pushing against his chest. Did not feel like any other. It was his love, the relief to have her trust and pure concern. Pulling away, he said, I love you so much. His voice was raw and dragged, and he not only wanted to tell her, he also wanted her to feel how much he loved her. Today, tomorrow, and always. He, her again, closing his eyes, resting for a moment, because he was feeling like he was home. A proper home where the feeling of love was real and it wasn't temporary. He felt like he was somewhere he belonged. Next morning, when Jungkook entered in his company from the elevator, he went to the top floor, and as he was walking toward his office, one of the employees bumped into him mistakenly and he spilled the coffee all over his expensive suit. Everyone around had their eyes popped up, their mouth open, because they knew now this employee had invited his date. For man, let's bet. I say he's going to spill a drum full of coffee over his head to his body before he fires him. Woman too. I say he will curse him so bad he will just eat him with his word before he fires him. Meanwhile, everyone had their eyes on the scene. The particular employee was visibly trembling, and his mouth wouldn't even open to utter a sorry. Jungkook lifted his gaze and looked at him. The employee swallowed. I'm sorry, boss. Jungkook shook his coat slightly before he said, it's okay. Shock, and the wide eyes of others widened way more, like their eyes were gonna come out of their sockets. What? And everyone was in disbelief. Seems like Mr. Shark is eating good now. And the other woman laughed through the shock. Jungkook got into his office and few moments later he held the phone to his ear. He smiled, something different on his face. It was happiness. I miss you already. Hwan stepped in her bedroom blushing as he said that. I miss you too, she replied, her cheeks glowing. Don't say that, I'll come back right now, she chuckled, blushing. No, focus on your work. I'll see you in the evening. I love you. He smiled. He would never get tired of hearing that from her mouth. I love you too. And he'd never get tired of saying it. Love wasn't so bad after all, because as long as it would last, it was worthy. It was actually very beautiful, a priceless feeling of affection that no money could buy, a selfless feeling of concern that didn't happen in any business. Love was pure, it was magic, and he was glad he got to experience it.